Today's country lies on the tip of South America. Famous for its coffee, beautiful women, and dancing, the country is on the bucket list of many. Get ready for our next stop around the world, Colombia. My story happened just last week in July 2024. I live in Concepcion, but was visiting family, my parents and my sister, in Medellin, which is only an hour and a half away. I recently moved cities because of a new job, so I was traveling alone, but I had made this commute countless times before, although always in the daytime. We were celebrating Independencia de Colombia, which, as you can probably guess, is our national holiday that celebrates independence from Spain. I had not seen my family as much as I wanted since moving out, so I was very excited to celebrate this day with them. My boss let me leave early in exchange that I would work tomorrow, which I happily agreed to. I wasted no time after my shift ended. I jumped on my motorbike, picked up a case of Aguila, and drove to Medellin. There was lots of road work on the way, so my 1.5-hour drive turned into a tedious 2-hour drive. I arrived at my childhood home to everyone waiting outside for me, either playing football or already drinking. There were a lot more people than I was expecting, as it's usually just my parents and my sister, though I didn't mind the extra company, although they were all strangers. My dad invited his coworker to the party, which apparently was an invitation for the coworker to invite everyone else that worked at the car repair center. My dad's a people pleaser, so he happily invited everyone into our home when they arrived unannounced. Okay, I may be a little dramatic, as it was only like 5 or 6 people, but there were more people I did not know than I did know. These coworkers were also old, so the party never felt overwhelming or disruptive. Anyways, I cracked open the beers I bought and ended up having more than I should have, probably to cope with the unexpected guests. I was planning on leaving before nighttime, as I had never driven home in the dark. Plus, the streets here aren't exactly safe when the sun goes down. I'm a responsible person though, and knew I had to wait it out, but not for too long because of the deal I previously made with my boss. After I felt sober enough, I said my goodbyes, hopped on my bike, and carefully drove back to Concepcion. As I assumed, there were not many people out at this time, which was more creepy than it was peaceful. Let me tell you, weaving around the mountains on the dark dirt paths with a dim yellow headlight is one of the most unsettling things you can do. There was an eerie feeling of loneliness, a cliff that would plummet me hundreds of meters to my death, and there have even been mountain lions spotted in the past. But what makes my story terrifying includes none of those things. I was just about at the halfway mark of my drive, the part I was dreading. This was where the mountains were the least forgiving. The loops and sharp turns seemed endless, doubled when driving at night. Just as I slowly turned left around a sharp bend, I was greeted with a horizontally parked van, but its lights were turned off. It was a Chevrolet Express, but I couldn't see anyone nearby. Unlike the United States, us Colombians don't drive large vans like these unless we're accompanied by a group of people. If it was just one person, then they would have driven a bike like I did. I was hit with an instant feeling of dread. Something was off, and my fight-or-flight instinct told me to turn around. It's not like I could squeeze past the van either. It was completely obstructing the road. I quickly positioned my bike around and was about to hit the gas, but then I felt a cold, forceful pressure on my back. It was a gun. My heart completely stopped and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Like, actually stood up. The man told me to get off the bike or he was going to shoot me. I was so scared I couldn't even move. He grabbed my shirt and threw me onto the road, and 2 other men came from behind him and started kicking me everywhere imaginable. I couldn't see because there was so much blood running down my face. All I could do was pray the men would stop before they beat me to death. The man with the gun, who I assumed was the leader, knelt down and pressed the barrel onto my forehead. He whispered to me, "We are going to take your bike and your money. Be glad we're in a good mood tonight, or you would already be down that cliff." With my consciousness coming and going, I handed them my wallet and phone and stayed lying on the ground. The van started up again and the men drove away, leaving me coughing my lungs out in the dust cloud. I tried standing up to walk, but it was obvious something was broken. The only thing I could do was sit and wait for help, but I had no phone and nobody was out at this time. My only option was to wait until morning, although my thirst was unbearable. Luckily the sun rises early here, so it was not long until a passerby noticed me and took me to a hospital. I ended up with 2 fractured ribs, a fractured mandible, a fractured fibula, and months of trauma. I suspect the men were members of the cartel and owed some important people some money fast. Okay, I finally have gained the courage to write this out for everyone. Maybe this can help calm my nerves, as I have been constantly on edge after this incident. I, like many people in my village, am a farmer, so I am outside more than I am inside. If anyone out there thinks farming is easy and peaceful, then you are very wrong. This occupation requires at least 80 hours of work a week and is very harsh on your joints, even when you are only in your 30s like I am. But I do what I do to support my family and give them a good life. Luckily, I had raised enough funds to purchase more property and needed some extra help besides the little I had from my wife and daughters. I also wanted my kids to focus on their studies and make it to university. My new hand, Giovanni, was a younger guy in need of work. Gio helped plow the fields and feed the livestock, and impressed me so much that I gave him a raise within the first month. He grew up on a farm, so his experience was well appreciated. Well, one evening we were finishing up the day when the tallest and darkest clouds I'd ever seen in my life swiftly approached our direction. We still had to finish the season's crop rotation and wanted to finish before the storm to ensure we stayed on our schedule. I instructed Gio to finish with the fields, while I gathered the livestock and made sure they were sheltered and safe for the evening. It was before dinner time, but the sky was almost as dark as the night. I recalled the wind came out of nowhere and was so strong it made me stumble on my feet. This was the point where I was starting to get concerned. I finally heard the cows indoors and locked the gate, but started to feel very disoriented. There was also this metallic taste in my mouth, sort of like blood. I ran to the fields where Gio was, to try to get us to safety because things were getting very bad very quickly. To my horror, I saw him still out working in the open fields. I was about to call out to him when I was blinded by the brightest light I had ever seen. Just imagine somebody aimed a military-grade flashlight centimeters from your eye and turned it on. Somehow I was now on the ground and had a massive headache from the deafening thunder. I quickly shot back up to help Gio, but something inside me knew it was pointless. I couldn't see him standing anymore. My wife was screaming at me to get inside, but I had to be sure. For everyone's sake, I won't describe in detail what I saw, but Gio was gone. The chances of being struck by lightning are so slim that many of us fail to recognize it can still happen and is often fatal. I plant a tree every year to remember Gio, and how he helped my family and I. Do not take your chances. Get inside when a storm comes, and stay away from open areas, metal, and water. I am glad I am almost done with school, and it's not for the reasons you might think. I wasn't desperately trying to fit in with my peers or miserable from homework every night, like the typical issues students have. I was stalked by a psycho classmate. He noticed me when we were just 13. For purposes of this story, we'll just call him Santiago. Santiago was that weird kid in school, you know, the one with no friends, that would make inappropriate jokes and smelled really bad. He also wasn't the most attractive person in the world. I think these faults that made him an outcast is what made him nuts. We had an English class together, which I honestly struggled in. Santiago recently emigrated from Argentina, so his English proficiency was already very good because of the schools there. This is where I made the biggest mistake of my life. I wanted to be a dentist, so I needed the best grades I could get, and English is also extremely important to know, so I asked Santiago for some extra help. We had only made small conversations before, and he seemed friendly enough. He agreed to help me later that day, and asked if I could meet him at his house. Red flag number 1. I said I would rather meet at the town square where all the students go after school, so that's what we ended up doing. Our first tutoring sessions actually went pretty well. He was very helpful, except that's when I first noticed the smell. Fast forward to study session number 2. Again, Santiago pleaded that I come to his house, and I stupidly caved. When I arrived, I was taken aback. He must have had the nicest house in the entire neighborhood. His parents clearly had money, so why was his appearance so awful? Speaking of his parents, they weren't even at his house. In fact, nobody was. Red flag number 2. I nervously stepped into his house, and this time Santiago had no interest in teaching me English. He was very touchy and asked me weird questions I'm not going to disclose here. I didn't even understand half of what he was asking me, as I was just 13. He wanted to show me his room, but I knew better than to go in there. I rushed to the door and ran home, not saying a word to him. My silence continued for a few months, and I just learned English by myself on my phone. I hadn't heard from Santiago, and thought my situation with him was finally over. I was at the park one day with my friend, and received a message on Instagram from an account I did not follow. I opened the message, curious of its content, and was horrified to see a short video of me sitting on the bench at the park. I quickly looked around to spot anybody with a camera recording me, but could not see anyone suspicious. I then returned to my house and told my parents about the message. They said if that happens again, then they would call the police, but to block the account for now. The next morning, I woke up with yet another message on my phone from yet another anonymous account. Contemplating if I should open the message or not, I eventually found the courage, and what I saw was somehow worse than the previous day. It was a picture of me in the middle of the night in my house with the caption, "Sleeping?" I once again showed my parents the account, but it was no longer active, so there was nothing we could do. I haven't received any more messages since then, but I'm still scared to go outside by myself. I'm certain the stalker is Santiago, and he's either trying to scare me to get back at me, or is planning something truly horrific. I'll keep you all updated if I'm still alive.